Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios, episode number 22 on the build tutorial. And as you can see, we have the lower body sitting here. This is going to be the next step we're going to work on. Looking underneath of this thing, it is all this area underneath here, super clean. No injector pin marks or anything like that. Actually, no flash or anything underneath of it. So we don't have much cleanup, if any, to do underneath of here. Now, like I say, I was going to paint this with semi-gloss black, and we'll do that on camera when we get to that point. But the cleanup all comes, unfortunately, from the top side. And what we are looking at is on the interior detail that's going to be seen. Let me see if I can hold it up here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This injector pin mark that's right here is a raised injector pin mark. No big deal, but in all reality, you won't see it anyway because when a dash sets in, it sets behind the dash. So you shouldn't have a problem with that one. You could leave it if you wanted to. You have another raised one here underneath the seat. No big deal. Seat's going to cover that up. Where it becomes an issue is we have a raised injector pin mark over here. We have one back here. We have one here and one here. And there's one here in the center of the console lid. And let's see if it'll zoom in there. It's right there in front of my finger. Um, Now, this floor pan actually has the cast in, it's kind of a rough surface that simulates carpet. Well, unfortunately, when you sand out these injector pin marks, there's one of two reasons you need to get rid of those. This one, this one, this one, and this one. First off is it's a modeling basic, so it needs to be addressed. If you can see into the interior of this, you don't want to leave those there because, that's something that really shouldn't be there. It's a basic. You need to clean it up. The second thing is this is a raised injector pin mark. And the way that they did the side panels on this particular kit, and I'll go ahead and snip one of these off the sprue here. Let's see, which one do we want to use? Let's do the driver's side here. And we're not going to do any cleanup or anything on them. We're going to snip them off so I can show you a problem area and why you want to clean up injector pin marks, especially raised ones. This piece here has two pins on it, one here, and we have a hole here and a hole here that they line up in. There's also another hole back here in the back that looks like it needs a little bit of clean out. There we go. We got that cleaned out. And what you'll do is you'll set these side panels down into place and line them up on those pins. Well, the problem that you will run into, and I'm going to see if I can hold it up here and get a view of it. If you look right along this line right here, you will notice that there is a gap in it. And the reason why there's a gap in it is I'm going to put a little mark right on this panel. Actually, I'm going to put an arrow on it to show you why there's a gap in that panel. Right where you see those arrows, the reason that that's not going all the way down into place is because there is a raised injector pin mark there. And that's why it's not sitting all the way down. So that means that most likely this top edge of the what would be the door panel is not going to line up even with your windows. I haven't checked any of that stuff yet to see if that would be the case, but I can already tell that this is a fitment issue. So we have to get rid of those injector pin marks. Very easy thing to do on the raised ones. Actually, let me go ahead and switch over to a brand new blade here. I've been using that one for a while, so we'll put a new one in the knife. Okay, the way I get rid of these raised ones is just basically come in with the knife on the side, and you want to very slowly just kind of whittle away at that raised injector pin mark. Now, I don't go in and use a lot of sandpaper to take these down because you're going to destroy the cast-in detail even more doing that. On my builds, it usually won't matter, but for the beginning guys that don't want to do the flocking that I'm going to do a video on, this is going to be the cleanest way to do it. Okay, now we got rid of the raised injector pin mark here. Now the problem is once you shave that mark down, you're going to have flat plastic where that mark was because this texture is not in there. So that's one of those evils, you know, even if that's a recessed mark and you fill it, you're still not going to have the texture around it. Now, if it's recessed, you can actually go in and kind of cheat with a brand new number 11 blade and kind of, you know, just tap the end of the blade into it and it'll put some of this texture back. You can do it that way. You know, but that's one of the, like I say, one of the pitfalls of having injector pin marks when they have this cast in type of detail like this. You're going to destroy it to a certain extent. But if you're very careful with shaving the injector pin marks down when they're raised like this, as you can see, I'm folding up the injector pin mark right there, just with the knife, and I'm just slowly going into it and cutting that out of there. And as you can see there on the end of the knife, that is the shaved piece of the injector pin mark right there. So you just want to take that off, and then I go back in and finish trimming it up and just get that as smooth as you can, and that'll keep, you know, as much detail on the floor pan as possible for you guys that are not going to do the flocking stage and don't really want to destroy all the carpet detail. And now that we have that out of there, you want to take your panel again, and let's see, I see a couple little spots on here that we want to address. I'm going to take the sanding stick and I'm going to very lightly go over this bottom surface just to make sure that everything's nice and flat where it's going to sit against the lower body. You don't want to take a lot off doing this because you will change the height. You'll actually make it lower then. So be careful with that. Just take off enough to clean up the edge of that. So now we'll set that back in place. More dry fitting. And we'll see what it looks like now. And as you can see, we got rid of a lot of that gap. You're not going to get rid of all of it, and you don't need to, because that's about as good as you're going to get this panel to fit. So that's all you really need to worry about. And then back here in the back, I have a sprue attachment point that I need to shave out and make sure that it's smooth, because this back section sets against this roll on the inside of the fender here. So you want to make sure that you get all that cleaned up and fit very well. Now there is injector pin marks. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 injector pin marks on this interior panel. You can see them there. Some of them are raised, some of them are recessed. You don't need to worry about those. You will see them until you put the actual body on, and then they will disappear. So you don't need to clean those up. It'd just be a kind of a waste of time to do that. And the next thing I'm checking is to make sure that the pins are not too long. These pins here are actually drilled all the way through the holes. The ones back here in the fenders are not. So I'm checking to see if this panel is going all the way down into place and the pin is not bottoming out in the fender. And actually it is hitting a little bit. So what I'm going to do is come in. I've actually got a little bit of flesh on this piece here that I'm going to shave off. And I'm going to take that actual pin and I'm just going to take a little bit off of it. Just a little bit, not much. And then when we set it down into place, we should get a nice tight fit with our lower chassis. And that's actually looking pretty good. We'll hold it up here and see if we can get a view of it. That's actually fitting very well, a lot better than it did when we first started out. So that's one thing that you need to look for. Now you just repeat that process on this side, same thing. There is two raised injector pin marks right here on the which would actually be the wheel tub. Now on this side, I've already sanded those out, and it's right where that panel is going to come across here. So same technique, since they're raised, you just want to come in with the knife and just slowly work those down. Now there's no carpet detail or anything like that back here in this area. Now another thing is around this hole that's here for that interior panel to set into, there's a little bit of a raised lip around it. Go ahead and make sure that you trim that down and everything's flush there. And then we're going to go in and take the rest of this injector pin mark off. We're just going to shave that down. Don't cut down in it too deep. Just make sure all you're doing is taking down the mark. Okay, we've got that, and I'm looking for another sanding stick here. Here we go. That's the one I'm looking for. And I'm just going to take the sanding stick, turn it around here on the good end, and I'm just going to lightly blend in this wheel tub area where that interior panel goes. Same thing up front. We're just sanding over top of that injector pin mark. Okay, that's the rough prep right there. We're done with that part. So we've got that all prepped up and ready to go. And I've got the two injector pin marks on this side. Now I'd already beforehand worked on them a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and take those all the way down. And that one there is actually gone. The next one we're going to go to is this one here on the top of the console. Same procedure. You just sliding the knife at a little bit of an angle, and all you're doing is just shaving off the injector pin mark. Now make sure you're holding the knife right so you don't cut into this edge over here and this edge over here. All you want to do is just very lightly shave off the raised part of the injector pin mark. And try to make it, don't get any ups and downs in it. And if you do a little bit, that's fine, because then I'm going to come in with the sanding stick and I'm going to lightly go over top of it, over top of the console lid. And I'm going to blend that all in where that pin mark was until it's totally gone. Okay, I've got that blended in. Now that I've sanded that console a little bit, what I've managed to do is actually make the edges of it more square than what they were. It's not rounded over like a padded console lid would be. So what I do is I'll bring my number 11 blade in here, and I'll just very lightly just roll a radius by scraping a little bit of the plastic away on both sides of that. And all you're doing is basically taking the sharp edge off of that console lid. And this console lid this whole console is basically patterned after a Corvette, pretty much the same console that's in my one-to-one car. And this is a padded lid. So if you've got a real sharp edge on it, it's going to look plastic. It's not going to look padded. So just roll that very slightly. And then you can take the sanding stick and just lightly go in and clean up the edges just a little bit. It doesn't need much. And when we're done, we've got the console lid rolled nice and looks real good. Came out nice. So this injector pin mark up here, you really don't need to mess with it. But same procedure. Now, sometimes I'll pull the knife toward me. Sometimes I push it away from me, depending on, what's in the way. In this particular case here, I'm going to set the knife And I'm actually going to slowly and lightly push the knife away from me, uh, just like that, and get rid of that injector pin mark. And then I'll come back in and do a little bit of scraping, because right here in this area, this is a taper and there's a line right here. Unless you're using a smaller sanding stick, you can't get one of these wider ones in there. So since this is sitting in behind the dash anyway, I've got rid of the injector pin mark. So if a judge put a flashlight in there, it's not going to shine the injector pin mark that's in behind that dash. And what I'm doing is just blending that whole panel in now. Same thing on this. I'm actually, going to radius the sides of the console just a little bit. Nothing major. Just like that. And that's got that taken care of. Like I say, the injector pin markets underneath this seat, don't need to worry about it. You're good to go there. The next step that we're doing a little bit of prep on, and I've already done most of it, is there's some flash around the engine bay opening here, and a couple mold lines and things like that. And you just want to go in and make sure that your corners are, nice and rounded, and you get all that looking good, because that will show up when you pull the hood off to display the engine. So you want to get that as clean as you can. And I've already went in with the sanding stick and sanded these edges here and down through here. All that's already been sanded. And back here at the firewall, I went like that and sanded the firewall section of it at the bottom. So we're all good to go with that. Now, the next thing that I'm going to be looking for is any flash or any mold lines or anything that's on the actual body panels. Now, on this particular kit, the mold line starts right here where the grill is going to go in. It comes across, goes up and over the headlight, across the front of the fender, and comes over here to the edge. But if you take your finger and feel along the bottom edge of this lower body, you will feel a real sharp line on it. That's because the mold line is coming right on this very outer edge all the way around. And it comes around and it stops right back here. And then it picks up on this side and does the same thing, comes back across the front of the fender, up and over the headlight, and into the grill area. So that is something that we want to get cleaned up. There's a sprue attachment point right here on the bottom. What I do with that is just take the sanding stick and very lightly lay it on there. You don't want to take a lot of material off. You just want to flatten out where that sprue attachment point was. Do that. Now, there wasn't a sprue attachment on this side, but what I tend to do is come in with the sanding stick and do the same procedure just to make sure everything's nice and flat and square on that side. And then the next thing you're looking for is, like I say, this mark that goes all the way around. There's a real sharp edge all the way around the body. So I will come in and very lightly blend the body panels and that line in. I'm trying to take most of that sharp edge or all that sharp edge off and not create any flat spots or anything like that in the fenders. So this is a little bit time consuming to do. It does take some practice to, keep your contours on your fenders right. And I was using a heavier side there. Now I've switched over to the lighter grit on the other side. And I'm just doing the finish work in this one area. And we're not going to do this whole thing on camera. I'm showing you the steps here to, prepping this piece. Same thing down this side, right here at the running boards. You want to go in with the sanding stick and just, lightly sand that, get that edge off, clean that up. Back onto the front part of the rear fender here. And when you know you've got it good, you can run your finger across it and you will not feel a sharp edge on it. And if you flip it over here, you can definitely feel a sharp edge. So once you get the sharp edge off of it, you're good to go. And you just want to continue with that. We're up on the front fender now. That line continues up there, so keep your contour of your fender as you're sanding, and you don't need to sand real hard. You don't need to take a lot of material off. All you're trying to do is take off that sharp edge that's on there. And the reason why we take that sharp edge off is it would look terrible if you painted over top of it, for one thing. And if you try to paint over top of it with some of the lighter colors, especially out of a can, you will find that the paint will separate. It will pull off of that real sharp edge, and it really shows up and looks bad. So we don't want that. We want it to look good. So now I'm switching over to the other side of the sandpaper here, or the sanding stick, the lighter side, and going back over what we just sanded, clean that up, blend everything in, down the running board. And I'll also take the sanding stick, the lighter side of it, once I get this sanded down flat this way, and I will roll that sanding stick around that corner a little bit and make sure that I radius this so I don't have any sharp edges on that. And you can also go in and radius your wheel wells a little bit like that too. That's something that I do on all my builds. Make sure that the wheel wells are nice and radiused and no sharp edges or anything on them. And I don't worry about whether the real car has it or not. That's just something that I do on all my models, no matter what it is. If it's automotive related, I always go in and clean all this stuff up. Pretty much same procedures on any car that I do. You'll do the same thing back here on the wheel wells in the rear. And like I say, we're not going to do all of this, but this is the stages that you go through to get all this prepped and ready to go. You shouldn't have any prep work on the running boards on this particular kit. Nothing in this raised part of the body, the lower body here. And we've already addressed the injector pin marks in the back, so we're good with that. So you just go over to the other side, do the same thing that we did here. Remember that that line flows around here. Now you may have to get a small sanding stick or just a regular piece of sandpaper to get down into these headlight areas down in here, and then just clean that line up all the way around the back. And other than that, that's probably about all the prep work that's going to be involved in the lower body. So that's all we're going to show on camera for now. That's the basic steps. I'm going to clean the rest of it up off camera, and we will come back most likely and get ready to start putting this into a coat of the Napa Gray Primer. So that'll be coming up as soon as I get everything else cleaned up on here, probably tonight. So stay tuned for that one. We'll do that video over at the spray booth. I'll spray it straight out of the can and show you how that comes out and the process on it. And somebody wanted me to do some commentary on, as I'm using the spray can, what I'm looking for, distances, how I'm basically how I'm spraying with the can. So I'm going to try to do a little bit of that to help some of you guys that, using spray cans out and might be having a problem with them. See if I can give you some pointers on that. And then after we get this in primer, we're going to check it and see what we got as far as the body work, sink marks, any of this stuff that we're sanding, see if any of that shows up. And then we'll come back in with a piece of the 3000 grit sanding sponge, and we'll go over the whole entire surface. It's going to be exposed that has primer. Well, all this will be primered. And then after we get that done, we will be shooting the lower body color on this out of the can from Tamiya. So that's it for this video. Like I say, I'm doing the same thing off camera that we just did right here, just finishing it up. You don't need to sit here and watch me do that for an hour. But we'll be back in the next one at the spray booth. So until then, this is Hunter from Showtime Studios, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.